Okay, if we begin just a little quiet sitting, just taking a simple focus of attention, your breath, or a simple point in front of you, and allowing the mind to relax peacefully on that. So, just to recap briefly the view that was presented yesterday. Our own real nature, the immediate givenness of how our existence presents itself, is something which is always open and always full. The openness is the indeterminacy of having a situation in which we exist, but we can't say what it is to be existing. We can't say what are the final determinants of our existence, because it's always elusive. It's always slipping away. When we try to say what we are, there's always more to say. There's always more to say. We can't sum ourselves up because we are not a thing. We are beyond totalization. This quality is grounded in the Buddhist notion of emptiness, that fundamentally there is an absence of inherent self-nature or ultimate definability in everything we experience. Ourselves, all the elements of the environment around us, tables, chairs, and so on. All of these are constructs which exist according to conventional uses of concepts. We glue the world together. We concretize the world according to the patterns and assumptions that we have. This description is not about metaphysics, though it can sound like that. It's actually the result of an applied phenomenology, which is the practice of meditation. But until we develop our practice, it's as if these are just abstract ideas. This openness is always full of something. There's always something going on. There's a ceaseless flow of experience. That experience is direct and immediate and ungraspable. When we try to concretize it, we lose it and we're left with an empty shell. That shell is the traces of memories, thoughts, and feelings through which we construct the narrative of our lives. According to the Buddhist tradition, long, long ago, in the very beginning, and moment by moment, ignorance operates as the wavering or delusion or mistaking of the indestructible integration of openness and the flow of experience, mistaking this to be a sequence of real separate events which present themselves to a real concrete subject. I, me, myself, live in a world which is like this and this and this, and as a consequence have this and this kind of experience. I am this, that is that. This dualization, this separation of a subject from the field of experience, with the concretization or the objectification of both the object and the subject, their reification, their establishment for us as things, means then that this particular shape that we experience ourselves having is then encountering a world of different shapes, trying to find a niche, trying to find moments of correspondence that will optimize my chance of achieving the fullness of my being, but the fullness of being as felt in terms of limitation. So instead of relaxing into an openness, one is concerned to protect one's contouring without having too many corners knocked off. So there's a kind of wariness and hunger as we move towards the environment, trying to appropriate that which appeals to us or seems to complete us, and trying to reject that which puts us into question or undermines the seeming continuity of our existence as something as such. So we then find ourselves in this situation which traditionally is called samsara. In the Tibetan tradition, samsara is translated as korwa, which means to go round and round. It's a situation in which things are recycled again and again, and we, being somewhat enthusiastic and naive consumers, are caught up in each wave of production as if it was fresh. It's like if you were to read the back numbers of Vogue magazine for the last 20 years, you would see these cycles of mini skirts and leather and then PVC and then stilettos and flat heels, and it just goes round and round and round. In the same way, our enthusiasms and our hopes and fears just go round and round. It's the same old crap, the 5 poisons being recycled again and again. But each time it appears very fresh. This season we're presenting anger. Oh, I don't know what's... So in that way there's a kind of intoxication, an intoxication or attachment, which is the glue whereby we become fascinated by things which we know are actually devoid of inherent value. We allow ourselves to be deluded because of the basic proposition, anything is better than nothing. Nothing is the big fear, that there will be just some empty void, a desolation, an abyss, the abject condition of falling out of the dreamed of hope, the paradise, falling through a gap in which all that seemed to contain and reassure and validate our existence is experienced as a bunch of empty signifiers, as insubstantial as the fluff on the dandelion at the end of its life, and that the winds of fate just blow us hither and thither. And in that fear we cling. We want to hang on to something, and it doesn't really matter what it is. And that is truly desolate. That we sell our soul for a mess of pottage. Gimme, gimme, gimme a man after midnight. Doesn't matter what he's like. I'm not going home alone tonight. and we do that with anything. It doesn't really matter what it is. We'll just take anything because it is too awful to be alone. But of course we're not really alone. What we are is lonely. Because lonely is the tilt in ourselves as the subject seeking an object for completion. The object will make me whole. This is the primary delusion of samsara. This is what makes us terribly vulnerable. Because we think the answer to my problems is somewhere else. And so we go looking here, looking there. We might look for it in sport, in diet, in fashion, in love, in alcohol. All sorts of things can appear to provide the solution. A nice holiday, a new book, a better quality of television, a new kind of study program. If only I can really get into that, I will be taken out of myself and through that return to myself. But I'm returned to myself with extra stuff so that I never quite fit into myself. The more we develop ourselves, it's very easy to be more alienated. Because what has been developed has been more hooks for conceptual interest. There is no fate worse than being an intellectual. Because everything becomes fascinating. And that fascination is the royal road to dissatisfaction. Because there is always more. And so you live in the realm of Tantalus. You know, it's always horizontal, gesturing out and out and out. And the magnum opus, the final completed work, can never arrive. We see this in this dreadful academic convention of endless footnotes, and referring to other people, so that one's voice is always inhabited by other people's voices. It's a bizarre dimension that the simple act of speaking meaningfully in a way that other people can hear is not enough. you have to add value to the immediacy of direct human contact, to the very moment of aliveness. And by adding that value, it's devalued and turned into something turgid and deadly. For example, if I'm talking here, it's very nice if I can see people's faces, because I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to myself. I've no need to say these things to myself. I'm talking to you. This is not like an academic conference. In conferences, people rudely go in and out all the time. They get bored and they go off for a pee or a fag or something, and the person just keeps reading their paper. They're not talking to anyone except their hope of publication and some points for progression in the academic system. A lot of talking is not directed to anything, to anyone. Or in Bakhtin's terms, it's to some super addressee who's never in the room, this mysterious other with a big O, who is the real person that we want to connect with. And in that elevation of our gaze, we miss the very people who are there. Because speaking to people means to find oneself really not needing too many words. Because what is speaking but the connection of the heart? And when we connect with the heart, we don't need anything from the other, because we find that we're peaceably returned to ourselves. The other doesn't complete us if we connect with them. Actually, we have nothing to give each other. But when we connect with each other, we can find ourselves at home. What is the home of the mind? It is infinity. Our mind itself, that is to say, the basic noetic capacity with which we experience our existence, is ungraspable. When we sit in practice and we look for the mind, what color is the mind? What shape is the mind? Where does it come from? Where does it stay? Where does it go to? There is nothing to be found. What we are is something beyond thought. And yet, thoughts arise, sensations arise, movement arises. So, this mysterious, weird, strange, unheimlich kind of removal from the familiar allows us to become familiar with that which we will never be familiar with. That is to say, enlightenment or awakening is not something you can take for granted. You can't be complacent about it. It's not like having a nice book that you can enjoy and then put on your shelf. It's not like having a painting that you can hang on the wall and every time you see it, it makes you feel good. Because that's relating to an object. Awakening is about being present in a state which never vanishes, but a state which doesn't vanish because you don't have it. You don't have enlightenment. I have a watch. I can put my watch on or I can take my watch off, but even if I take my watch off and put it down, it's still my watch. I can have a thought about my childhood, or I can have a thought of what I have to do on Monday. I can allow that thought to go from my mind, and then the thought will come back into my mind. Objects come and go, and we move them around, and they seem to have roughly the same value as they come hither and thither. But awareness is not like that. Everything that we call the subject is actually an object. We are not awakened to the true nature of subjectivity because we live in the state of false substitution of momentary entities for true openness and awareness. Awareness itself is not active. It's not doing anything. Yesterday we were talking about intentionality, which is the direction of the self-subject. I as an individual, something individuated, cut off from the field of experience, tilted towards something else. In that state there is something to be done. I have to be about something. But even in the process of being about something, there is a meta-awareness of what is going on. Unless we're very drunk or very aroused, usually the light is on. The light is often in the form of an internal dialogue. Many people live their lives with a continuous commentary about who they are and what they are. That's a rather dull light, but it is nonetheless a sense of there is the performativity of existence, and then there is an observer or an awareness of that. When the observer is already inhabited by a voice which has reified itself, turned itself into a thing, then you have in your head a critical judge who is passing a commentary on yourself. So, I am doing this, but I could be doing it better. Or, fuck, why did I forget to do that? So there's a kind of internal zooming around of these positions. This is not awareness. Awareness is calm and clear and never moves. The mind itself is not a thing, it's not an energy, it is the integration of awareness and space. It's like the room itself. This room exists as a space, and in this space many things can come and go. The furniture can be moved around, people could dance and sing, they could lie down as if they were dead. All sorts of things could be done in this room, because space offers a hospitality. The more furniture you have in the room, and especially the more delicate furniture you have in the room, the more careful you have to be. If we were to put a white carpet on the floor here, we would need to be more careful with tea. This is what happens when we become neurotic. We become anxious and worried about staining ourselves. It's the problem with a white sweater, isn't it? Very dangerous. So, when we become fragile, we feel everything's going to mark us. And so there's a kind of hypervigilance. A word that you see again and again in Tibetan is Vajra. Vajra means indestructible. What is indestructible? Our mind is indestructible. That means our mind is not neurotic. Our anxiety, our fear, our worry, our sense of value, our high self-esteem, low self-esteem, all the familiar constituents of ourselves are not our true nature, because they are all impermanent, contingent, that is to say, created and dependent on a variety of circumstances, and susceptible to change. What is indestructible is awareness itself. However, awareness, because it's like space, is something we don't usually attend to. When we come into the room, we look around, and what do we see? We see the color of the walls, we see the paintings, we see the people. We don't usually attend to the shaping of space. When I look out at you, I see the shapes around you, the shapes of the space, just as you would in looking at a painting. You have some image which is figural, and then you have the background. And the background is contributing to the presencing of what is figural. So we have, as it were, space in this room which seems to be displaced by the presence of people's bodies. It looks like space is what is left over when the real event appears, as if space was some kind of backing group that just kind of gets the crowd warmed up, and then the main thing comes on. Ha-ha, it's me. So we take up space, and space we expect to just sort of back off and not cramp our style. That's not really what it is. This is the madness of ignorance. Because actually we are the children of space. Our real nature is space. We are ungraspable. We have all these stories about ourselves, but they don't sum us up. So from the practice of Dzogchen, the key thing is to start to live in the presence of the moment, and to accept the absolute impermanence and flow of all phenomena. To move from control and avoidance towards a lived, vibrant participation, which means never being sure, never being settled. Why do we want to be settled? What is the value of safety? Things are always occurring. What can you secure? What are you going to nail it to? Samsara is a state of terrible amateurish DIY in which we're all trying to nail ourselves onto secure territory with drills, and we're putting it through our toes and through our eyeballs, you know. We're all pinning ourselves to things, but it just doesn't work. You put something on the shelf and it falls down. You create a sense of who you are. You think you've now got a good relationship, and suddenly it's gone. How the hell did that happen? You think, I put all these hours into working it out. I thought it was going to work out this time. Where the hell's it gone? We're not trained. We're not skilled tradesmen. We're just you lousy British, untrained, useless. Isn't it? That's why we need all these Polish people coming here to put our shelves up. The Buddha is the pole of the mind. So, we find ourselves in a situation where we have lots of energy, lots of plans, lots of enthusiasm, but it doesn't quite work. And that's often because, with the best will in the world, our parents, teachers, and so on have given us maps which don't quite fit with things as they are. The cultural maps, the philosophical maps, the religious maps that we often inherit are dogmas or constructs. That is to say, they are rich and beautiful creations. They are the fruits of enormous creativity. But they arise and blossom like huge summer clouds, and they don't actually show how things are. So we can follow many different paths, which have some value and open our hearts in some way, facilitate the flow of life, but they don't actually do the business, because they tilt out in terms of how we should be, what we could do. And that gesture is always a movement away from ourselves. So I am going to become more myself by doing more things. The logic of that is, I am a construct, and the constructed or fabricated nature of myself can be improved. It's basically a materialistic notion, as if we were a Lego set, and we just needed to get a few more bits from Dad for Christmas, and then we could make a more fantastical model of ourselves, and then we'd be at home, we'd be comfortable. But perhaps it's not like that. Perhaps we are not things. And if we're not things, then doing more things won't make us closer to ourselves. So, from the point of view of Dzogchen, the most important thing is relaxation, doing less. That doesn't mean that activity shouldn't continue. Activity happens all the time. We breathe in and out, our bodies move, we hear sounds. Activity flows by itself. The problem is that we, in our ego busyness, think we are adding value by adding ourselves. Actually, we add deformation to the immediacy of the moment by making it overcomplicated by thinking, I have to do this about that. If we just relax, do less, we will find that we respond into the situation. Responses arise out of openness. Without planning, you can know what to do. You know, if there are little children around, adults, when they get anxious, often think, well, what will I do with them? Well, all you need to do is sort of sit down at the level of the child and say, hi, what do you want to do? And they'll tell you. And then you do what they want to do. You know, you don't have to think about playing with children. With most things in life, participation will show you the way. So, expert planning, preparing, creating structures in advance of the situation acts as a violence onto the immediacy of our capacity to respond. So that instead of trusting that what we need will be to hand, that we will arise fresh into the moment, we start with an anxiety. I will be judged if I get this wrong, therefore it behoves me to practice well and get it right. Therefore preparation is the basis of security. But what am I preparing for? This event which is coming. Now, the event hasn't yet come, so you don't know what it is. So your preparation is entirely a mental fabrication based on your projections about how the situation will be. So you arrive fully formed, and then you have to deform yourself to fit the actual situation. How many people want to deform themselves? No. So we often then insist, which brings about the conflict of the situation. You know, the main thing, if you do business consultancy, the most important thing in any kind of consultancy is to work out who in the organization is inviting you in. Because organizations always have internal politics, and whoever is inviting you will have an agenda which is probably not shared with the rest of the organization. It's only by being able to read the complex field of organizational politics that you can start to situate yourself in a position which is no position within the organization. And only then can you have a fresh gaze that will illuminate what's going on. The dynamics of subject-object dualistic interaction is that other people will always try to place us in a place that is familiar to them. We always want to be the object of desire of the other. So we try to work out what is the desire of the other and turn ourselves into that object. Freedom begins when we realize I am not an object to be shaped. According to Dzogchen, our nature is threefold: the openness of awareness and its ungraspability, the ceaseless richness of the pluralistic, multiform, endless array of creativity of the mind, thoughts, feelings, sensations, ceaselessly flowing in an endless, majestic stream. And from that, from the openness and the richness, our moment-by-moment participation into a world with others, which is always exactly this or that and not another. As soon as we are in contact, as soon as we are present with others, it's always precise. It can't be a mess. Each moment of a mess, a messy situation, an argument, a confusion, is exactly precise. It is this, it is that, it is that. Because time is serial on the level of participation. On the level of openness, there is no time. And on the level of richness, this middle area, sometimes called Sambhogakaya, time is everything there present in the same moment. So different modalities of time co-present themselves. But, to return to the notion of Lojong, we find ourselves in our ordinary examination, in the sort of audit we can do of ourselves, as lacking in certain factors. We might think we lack courage or compassion. We lack endurance. We find ourselves being rather selfish. We find that the thoughts that arise for us are self-referential, perhaps persecutory. And we want to be alleviated from this. The Buddha taught many different methods for doing this. But what is really important is to recognize the difference between meditation practices which are about integration with the natural given condition and methods of practice which are for developing the capacity to move along a path. In general, the Buddhist teachings are divided into two main groupings. One is called the vehicles of the cause. That is to say, these are methods of study, reflection, and practice which generate the causes of being able to awaken or become enlightened at a future time. This includes practices like Lojong or mind training. The second are called vehicles of the result, which are vehicles which bring us into a state in which we practice with the result already present. In the method of Tantra, that is the practice of as if. We act as if we are living in a mandala of deities. We act as if we are divine beings, and that all the beings we encounter are divine. And through that as-ifness, through that imaginational intentionality, we transform the sphere in which we operate. In the practice of Dzogchen, we directly integrate into the ground nature, and we practice with the absolute openness of trusting that now whatever is arising from the ground. So these are two very different practices. One says the door to paradise is already open and you have stepped through. You don't even need to move. You're already there. And the other is saying it's a long way off. Courage, pilgrim, and here's something for your rucksack. So, we're now going to look a little bit at rucksack territory. Lojong says, the main thing that keeps us far from our goal, from where we want to get to, is our obsession with ourselves. Self-protection and self-aggrandizement. Feeling that we are more important than other people, we put ourselves first. Of course, we often don't do that in a sort of grand narcissistic manner, but just in a simple manner. What do we need? Shall I get first? So, if you're in the supermarket and you're looking to the checkout and there's various people queuing up, and you've got your trolley full of stuff and someone's coming with 3 items in their hand, should you let them go first? Well, I was here first, I'm already waiting for these other people. Yeah, but they've only got 3 things. How will you work that out? Should you sacrifice your 2 seconds for them, or should you insist on the letter of the law? God bless the Pharisees. No. How shall one proceed? It's a big question. So all the time, if you're an ethical person, you find yourself tortured and spinning on these points. What shall I do? I want to be useful, but there's a cost. Do I want to pay the cost? In order to kind of free ourselves from this turning and turning and turning, that we have the teaching of Tonglen in Buddhism. Tongwa means to give. We give to all other beings everything which is beneficial and good. And Lenpa, to take, we take onto ourselves all the troubles and all the misery of all beings. So we don't need to ever worry about what we're going to do. We're taking the shit. What do you want? Shit. What are you giving? Gold. Life's dead simple then, isn't it? It's very simple. The function of these practices is to try to remove the anxiety and the interminable movement of how shall I behave? What shall I do? These kind of practices are a kind of military discipline for the mind, because the endless wavering and slavering around of thoughts and feelings and maybe and yes and no, endless ambivalence is hopeless. Ambivalence, like a double charge, this way and that way, this is the absolute energy of dualism. And dualism, from the point of view of Buddhism, is the enemy, because there is no real separation between subject and object. So if you're uncertain about what to do, you're shifting one on the other. It's like these little hand-powered torches. You have to keep squeezing them, and then the light comes on. And that pulsation, like the pulsation of the heart, keeps the light going, keeps us alive. In the same way, the life of samsara is exactly the pulsation of yes, no, good, bad. It's a kind of structureless, binary oppositional world in which the tension between these polarities creates an ongoing charge, discharge. I'm good, I'm bad, I'd like to, I better not, I want to, oh, but why? That swithering back and forth, every time you rock, there's a kind of exchange of energy which keeps the whole of samsara going. So you can see, hopefully, that there are two different methods here. The first method we described this morning is about integrating into space, in which you leave the centrality of the main domain of motility, of movement, of engagement, and you rest into spaciousness, seeing that all movement arises from space. And in the second kind of Dharma path, you engage with movement, but with a definite intention. So instead of being uncertain what to do, you bring to the situation the certainty of your commitment with a Dharma path. I will take the Bodhisattva vow, I make myself available for others. So, whenever I enter a difficult situation, I will know what to do because I am prefigured. I am tilted already in a particular direction. I will be of help to others. And as we started to look yesterday, I will be of help to others not on the basis of their external qualities, not helping people because they deserve it, but I will help them because I have decided to help them. Therefore, there is nothing to think about in my helping them. You know, Gordon Brown, our soon-to-be king of the world, is a great believer in means testing. He has the mean-spirited Scottish Protestant view that I grew up with and learned to despise. Always sniffing around in people's underwear to find out what they're doing. This is the spirit of Calvin, you know, who has the glorious honor of being the person who reintroduced torture and murder after the Protestant Revolution. The thing that was anathema to Luther was reintroduced by Calvin. And it is the investigation of people. When Calvin ran Geneva, he ran it as a police state. He had people going round the streets at night, listening at the doors to see if people were playing music. And then bang, 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 the door would be broken open and people would be dragged off and thrown into prison for enjoying themselves. This is Gordon Brown's vision of Britain. Truly dreadful. Everything will have to be known. Everything will have to be revealed, not for its own sake, not for the pleasure of speculation, but in order to be weighed and called to account. But of course, you can't weigh the human soul. Human beings are beyond arithmetic. Human beings are this mystery of ceaseless revelation. And so as soon as you start judging and measuring and weighing, you miss the whole thing. You've entered into a bloody objectification, a mistaking of the very meaning of existence. And of course, we have these Gordon Browns in our head. All of us will have a judge somewhere that weighs us up, that hates ourselves, that thinks we screw up, that worries that our life isn't going right, that would like to be better but doesn't know how. And that grinding and grinding is terribly dangerous because it uses up a lot of energy, it misconstrues reality as it is, and it creates an emotional charge which operates in our belly and fills up all the energy channels of the body, floods the frontal lobes of the brain with obnoxious chemicals that keep us in hyperarousal, and makes us terribly wary of ourselves and others. We don't trust ourselves and we don't trust other people. So the Bodhisattva practice is to get away from that. It's as it says in the Bible, cast your bread upon the waters. Just launch yourself into life and see what happens. Don't count. Turn off the meter. Stop judging yourself. Stop weighing yourself. And just think, I'm for the other. That's what I'm for. Decide that when you wake up in the morning. Decide that when you go to sleep at night. When you walk down the street, every person you meet, you can greet them in your heart or with your voice. Welcome, welcome. I'm for you. I'm for you. I'm for the rich person, which means I don't envy them. I'm for the poor person, which means I don't pity them. What is it about these people that we're for? It's for their awakening. That is to say, our belief and our joy for others is not that they have long, happy lives. They can have that as well. But in a sense, that's just the dross. That's not the real thing. That's not the icing on the cake. That's the dross. The real thing is that people should be fresh. They should be in their eyes, in their senses, alive and connected. What is it that causes us to glaze over? It's preoccupation. It's sinking into anxiety, the foreclosures of memory traces, worrying about the past, being anxious about the future, which tear us out of the fullness of our presence towards mental realms. We're rolling around as if we're in a science fiction movie. So the practice of Tonglen that says basically, I give all my happiness to others, I take all their pain and suffering, is a very, very present activity. All their suffering is coming towards me. What am I going to do with it? Where am I going to keep it? If you said, okay, this is a very nice Buddhist center, I think we should have a kind of fete to raise some money for it. We're going to see if people have got any old clothes and stuff that they would like to bring, and then we're going to have a little market in here. Well, if you were lucky, people would send lots and lots of stuff. They might send mountains of stuff. But then you've got to have a space to deal with this stuff. Where are you going to put it? In a similar way, if you invite everyone to give you all their sorrow, all their misery, all their suffering, where are you going to put it? If you took a whole load of junk for your flea market, you have to have a hole. Well, we've got a hole, that's fine. But is your ego big enough to hold the suffering of all beings? Is your heart big enough? You need an extension. Luckily we have some Polish builders. So we are going to build out more and more rooms so that we can accommodate the suffering of all sentient beings. How do we get such a big room in our heart? Emptiness. Wisdom and compassion have to go together. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. There's no point in saying, I want to help all sentient beings, but unfortunately, no vacancies. I'm already a bit too busy. I'd like to, but you can't do the but once you say I will. It has to be without buts, without commas, without any punctuation. I'm for you. Which means, first of all, we have to work out who is this I that is making the grand gesture. Because a small I making grand gestures is just another term for Tony Blair. There is a political agenda to all of this. I come here to free myself from my political bile. You're doing a marvelous job for me. I feel much lighter already. So, how do we make our heart bigger? It's a real question. Whenever we define ourselves, whenever we know ourselves to be this or that, when we know our capacity, I couldn't do that, I don't like that, I couldn't give a talk in public, I get so anxious. These freezings are like walls which cramp us. They limit the flow of our energy, and they tell us that we know who we are. Therefore, they protect us from the adventure of finding out who we are. They act as a dull safety, like a kind of alcoholic haze, because in it we can't see that actually there is more to me than meets the eye, but I don't want my eye to meet the more. I want to turn my gaze away from my potential, because otherwise I'd be wrenched out of the arena of comfort. Not necessarily a positive comfort, because our anxiety is also comforting. But the comfort of the familiar, the known, as if it was a true definition. So the beginning of developing wisdom is to start to inquire, to put things into question, which means in a sort of phenomenological style we have to bracket off, we have to place on one side our familiar definitions. All that we know about ourselves we have to suspend, place that in abeyance so that it is not insisting and determining the arena in front of us. So whenever we find ourselves saying, I can't do this, or I always do that, we want to catch that and think, oh, that's a wall. I've just put up a wall. Take down that wall. No planning permission. The court of bodhisattvas doesn't allow these constructions anymore. We want wide open territory. So observe how you limit yourself. That's the most important thing. It's a kind of contemplation or reflective meditation, and you can do it all day long. You can keep a little diary in your bag, and whenever you find yourself limiting yourself, you write it down. I have to. Sometimes these things will come in a cognitive form, like a series of words, and sometimes they come in an impulse from the body. Like you suddenly find yourself wanting to eat something, or open a bottle of wine, or go to sleep, or phone a friend, or send an email. In that moment, something is closing down. You find yourself driven by something, that you're encapsulated in something narrow. Without trying to resist that, observe its function. The openness of a minute before has now been lost, and you're encapsulated inside a particular positioning. Just observe what then happens. How does it affect the posture of your body, your breathing, your gaze, your availability for connection with the environment? And then we start to see, oh yes, moment by moment, through the course of the day, I am limiting my existence. That's what I do all the time. And therefore, when I meet the world, I meet it from a very small place. This is tragic. This is absolutely tragic. When I look inside to find my mind, I don't find anything solid. Because every definition that I give about my mind vanishes as soon as it arises. I am lazy. I am slow. I am stupid. I'm too quick. I can't do this. Each of these things that seems to come up and be so true, so real, so redolent in meaning, is then gone. If it was real, why is it gone? It's just gone. The endless intoxication with these beliefs as they arise and pulse keeps us on this journey across a long, long river. Each one of these thoughts is like a stepping stone. We're always treading on these ideas as if these ideas were defining the true nature of the situation. But each is ephemeral. How can an ephemeral moment be telling us the true and enduring truth about ourselves? Not possible. That's the lie. So once we start to see, I lie to myself all the time, I cheat myself by believing that the impermanent is permanent, we can start to relax. That's what I'm doing. I don't need to do that. Because it is a doing. If you don't do a doing, it will be okay. Things stop when you stop doing them. You don't have to do anything to stop them. You just have to not do them. Not doing is not energetic. It doesn't do any damage to you. It won't drain you. It won't exhaust you. You just stop doing it. Of course, there's the impulse is there. These thoughts, these nexes, these nodal points of condensed meaning and habit are enormously tempting. They're like pads of Velcro. They seem to just lock you on. They're like a kind of super glue. But what is that glue? That's what we have to look at. Why is this idea, which I can see is ridiculous, why is it so tempting to me? That's where we really encounter the raw face of attachment. As the Buddha says in many, many texts, attachment is the root cause of suffering. Attachment arises from ignorance, and attachment binds us into painful situations. Why do people maintain negative views about themselves? So many people have thoughts of hating themselves, feeling that they're inadequate. Why would you want to have that? That's a really important question. You have to look for yourself. What is the function of keeping this stuff? Is it sentimental? Is it sentimental? Do we really see the thing as it is? You know, you can do that just to go into a big shop. Look at all the stuff they're trying to sell. Would you want to buy it? No. Look in an antique shop. You think somebody's owned this crap. I wouldn't want it in my house. Other people like stuff that we don't like, and we like stuff that other people don't like. This is a really central thing to realize. I make choices. That is to say, I put my life, my energy, my libido, my associations into this object, and that's what makes it shine. It's not shining of itself. I am the shiner of the shining object. The light of the object is the light of the mind. No object is shiny in and of itself. That's an amazing thing to see. Because if we see that, then we realize that we are being cheated by our own brilliance. We're not being cheated because we're daft or stupid, but it is the very light of our mind, our own creativity, the wonderful energy that can make anything shine. We delude ourselves by believing now the shine is out there, it's in the other. But it is we who do that. So as soon as you recognize, oh, I'm the shiny one, everything just becomes a little more transparent, a little more translucent, and you start to see that the light of your mind is passing through phenomena, that the world is made of these shimmering crystal objects, and as your light passes through them, they glow and then not. They glow and then not. How wonderful. And then you look at yourself, and it's the same thing. All that you are, all that you take yourself to be, is glowing because of how you position your light in relation to it. If you focus your light on your faults and your limitations, that's what will glow for you. If you focus your light on your good qualities, that's what will glow for you. Neither are real. Your good qualities are good and yet empty, devoid of inherent self-nature, and your bad qualities are real or presenting, but without an inherent reality. And what gives them their energy is the light of your own mind. When you start to do that, you see that the mind itself, which is open and empty, is effulgent. The radiance of the world is the radiance of the mind. The world is a mental phenomena. The more we are centered in ourselves and connected out, the whole world starts to shine for us. And then we're never bored. Boredom is not an option. But we're also not so excited. Everything has the same taste. You still have discrimination. It's not put through a blender. It's not homogenized. Everything is just as it is. But we don't get so manic or so depressed. Because what is the nature of phenomena? Radiant translucence. Light shining empty forms. These paintings that we see of these gods, the images that are presented make them look a bit solid and substantial. But actually, the descriptions are that they are shimmering and transparent. So that when we visualize these deities, we imagine them made out of gossamer or glass. So they have the form, the shape, and the coloration, but you can see right through them. They have no solidity inside them. And when we do tantric practice, and we visualize the deity in front of us, we imagine rays of light coming from the deity, merging into us, and our body becoming made of light. And then rays of light going out from our body to all beings. And in that way we start to see that the whole world is the shimmering surface of light. This is the lived experience of emptiness. Everything is there just as it is. It doesn't suddenly vanish. And yet you see for the first time that it's light, moving, dynamic, and not solid and clumping. So you're no longer bashing into the world, but in this wonderful, directly, spontaneously unchoreographed, integrated movement. From that, there's spaciousness everywhere. And that's the ground spaciousness through which you can say, I take on the sufferings of all beings. Because now your house is very big. If your house is very small, the danger is you end up with a grinding, dutiful, hard-working, po-faced kind of culture. We already have enough of that. You know, my teacher always said to me, make it as easy as possible. Do it the quick way. Very helpful. It doesn't have to be hard. We have a notion that work is laborious. Just think of that, laborious. Oh my God. It's burdenful. And you become inured to it. You knuckle down. You just get on with it. You put up with it. You thole it. There's a sense of trudging. But actually, work is simply the flow of energy. Since energy is always flowing and we are always flowing, the essence of work is to almost like finding the ley line of it, to get in the movement of it, and then you're carried by the flow of the energy of the world. Work is difficult when we can't find the rhythm. So the purpose of all the wisdom teachings in Buddhism, the teachings focused on emptiness, is to loosen the heaviness, the concretizing function of our mind, so that we become light and delicate and can start to feel the possibilities of movement. From that, compassion rings out, because compassion is the capacity to be with people and to reach them and make a connection with them in as many ways as possible, according to the situation. Shall we have a wee cup of tea and then do some... Okay. So I'll say a little bit more about emptiness, because I think it's a very important idea. In many ways it is very similar to the project of deconstruction, which has been a powerful force in modern intellectual life. Deconstruction sets out the idea that what we encounter in life are actually constructs, cultural constructs, historically developed constructs, and so on. And our tendency is to take these constructs for granted. When we experience the full force of the constructs in the world around us, we often feel imprisoned by them, and therefore what we seek to do is to push them away or to destroy them, so that construction gets met by destruction. And so the kind of modernist movement of destroying the past, Mao Zedong's obliteration of many aspects of Chinese culture, the cutting out of many of the inner city areas and putting up high-rise flats, visions of a new future. A lot of the idea is that in order to move forward, you have to clear away the past. And one can certainly have that as a psychological function as well. You can feel that you have to get rid of what's happened to you. You have to clear things out, as if our existence was some loft that was full of old junk. But the idea of deconstruction is very different. It's that we should put things into question, that we should deny the totalizing valediction of the notion that the sum of the parts that comes together and creates this mystical extra element, so that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. All constructs are made up of parts, things brought together, juxtaposed, organized in a way that we can see up to a certain point, and then suddenly this magical thing happens that it all settles into place and it seems to be just the thing itself. For example, if you're playing with a child and doing a crossword puzzle, you've got all the different bits and pieces and you put them together, and when they're all in place, suddenly there is that picture. And the picture appears to leap out, a fully formed gestalt, a thing which is just itself. And in that seeming givenness of it, it resists the actual knowledge that we have that it's built up of pieces. Does that make sense? And that's the point of ignorance. Because this add-on appears, as we were looking earlier, about how the light is coming from the light of the mind illuminating the object. The givenness of the object is a quality of the mind, not of the object. Yeah? We ourselves seal these contingent moments into something which appears to be just that. Of course, impermanence moves, the thing shifts, it unravels, it unfurls, and it's something else. But while it was that thing, it appears to be that thing. For example, here we are in this Buddha center. A while ago, this was a very different sort of building. Then builders came in, it's painted, and now it's taken on a life of its own. It appears to be something. So every time you come here, you come to Kandroling, you come to this Buddhist center. The fact that this building has been used for other purposes in the past is swept away. It's as if it has never been anything other than what it is. And yet, it is only this because of factors, because somebody's paying the rent, because various people contribute to the upkeep of the building, because nobody's broken in and spoiled it, and so on and so on and so on. There are many factors that hover around, factors of maintenance which need to be applied, factors of destruction or change which need to be held in abeyance, and the dynamic between these two allows the continuity of this environment, and yet we can take it for granted as if it was here just by itself. And of course that's why, when we have an event like this one, we always need to remember with gratitude the work of all the people who keep a center like this going, because it doesn't just happen by itself. But it's very interesting, I think, that if you work in any voluntary organization, you have the experience of being taken for granted. Because actually, what people want is to believe that things are just there by themselves. To recognize that things are a construct brings a slight edge of hesitation. Well, if people didn't help, then it wouldn't happen. But I want it to happen, so I'll just pretend it happens by itself. It's just there. And that's one of the reasons why children are often not very grateful to their parents, especially to their mum. It's very important for children to take their mum for granted. Because if they realize that mum was doing these things for them at some sacrifice to themselves, that mum was actually making choices involving self-abnegation to favor the child, to put them first, the child would feel burdened with a huge responsibility, which of course in the good teaching from Moses they damn well ought to have. But it's not very popular nowadays. So somehow the sense of givenness is very important. Now, one of the typographical conventions that was attempted in the early period of deconstructive writing was the idea of putting a bar or a line through a word so that the word would be printed But the line through it would act as a kind of erasure, a rubbing away, a dissolving of the full impact of the intoxication of taking the word at full value. So you might have God with a line through it. And the line reminds us that God acts, the word, the term, the sign, is acting as a kind of attractor of values, of meanings. The free-floating signifiers of our existence get pulled into terms like God, love, death, and these terms can then have multiple functions for many different people, all of which seem intensely real. And it's exactly in these moments that we forget we are putting our value into that world. That word is being pumped up, shaped, adapted by us, while we believe that the meaning is being revealed to us from the word. Does that make sense? That's exactly where we can see how emptiness, how the openness of the term, its natural indeterminacy, is covered over by our mistaken belief that the word is the truth, that the word is what it is. So if people say, I love you, what does that word love mean? I mean, clearly endless things. And if you're in a relationship with someone, through time, that word can mean many, many things. It can mean, I desire you, I want you, please don't leave me, you should do what I say. It can mean endless numbers of movements. And by the very indeterminacy of the word, it becomes a flexible link, a bit like in a pontoon bridge, where the barrels that are tied together can move up and down, and the bridge can adapt to the flow of the river. What we do when we deconstruct something is to see that it exists as a fabrication. We don't need to take it apart. We don't need to stop using it, but we do need to remind ourselves, to call ourselves again and again to the fact of its fabrication. And the fact that it hasn't been fabricated in a factory somewhere else, but that we are co-fabricators with the potentiality of the sign. That is to say, that we are writing or inscribing the world as we encounter it. Does that make sense? And that if we don't put ourselves into the world will be other than our world. You know? Which is, in the work that I do with couples, one of the big problems we often find is that couples don't have the couples that certainly come for therapy, don't have, they haven't evolved a method of making we decisions. Very often, each party makes an individual decision. So they live together, maybe for many, many years, maybe fully married with kids and all the rest of it. But essentially, they're living as two individuals. And they have a delegation of tasks. And that sets up a sort of pattern of parallel lives. So one party organizes the holidays. So Tom says to Mary, well, I've booked our holiday. And Mary says, okay. She says okay when she's in love with Tom, but when she starts to get pissed off with Tom, she says, well, you didn't ask me. I don't want to go there. And so the quarrels start, and they've no idea actually how to make a we decision. Because we begins when both individuals, I and I, can put this bar through themselves, can put themselves into question, and say, what I know about myself, the trajectory of my desire, is not something I can pursue in relation to the task or the project of being with this other. That is to say, I for I, me for me, is different from the me for you. And the me for you is a different me. Therefore, the me for me cannot decide what can only be done by the me for you. And if you can't inhabit a me for you, you can't make an us. Does that make sense? And when it's two me for me's, there's just endless clashing. And you get the power politics of who's going to dominate and control. But to be me for you means you have to exist in me as I form myself towards you. You are the addressee of my intentionality here, and therefore I must prepare my intentionality for you. You're a vegetarian, I like steak, I will cook vegetables for you. The fact that I like steak has nothing to do with me cooking for you, because you're a vegetarian. But I like steak. Why am I cooking vegetables when I like steak? But you're a vegetarian. And that's the tension always between these positions. And of course it can become a very helpful tension, because it moves both ways to deconstruct or to open up the gestures. Because if you only tilt towards the other with a self-abnegation, you can empty out yourself into a place of abasement and lostness. You can become the hopeless slave, the slave who finds themselves in the other but never is returned to themselves by that gesture. So we need to be for ourselves and for the other. That's why when we do meditations like metta bhavana, developing love and kindness, we develop it to all beings, including myself, not to split subject and object. So emptiness is not the rubbing out of the world, but the rubbing out of the illusion of the inherent self-nature of things. Inherent self-nature means that phenomena are self-defining. So, outside this building, there are a row of cars. When we look out, we can see, yes, these are all cars. That is to say, car is a generic type. It's a group term, a term which allows us to subsume certain phenomena. It's an abstraction which gives us power to name and locate and place phenomena. Then when we look at a particular car, we say, this is a blue BMW. This is a particular kind of car. What is a blue BMW? It is paint and chromium and seats and all these things. We could take each part out, because the car was made by putting different bits in. If the bits were put in, you can take them back out again. Now with the new electronic aspects of cars, it's more difficult to do that, but you could still take all the bits out and lay them out. Then you could unpack the bits of the bits. The seat could be taken down and broken down. And then you could look at the iron in the seat, and you can break it down into its molecules. Then you can break the molecules down into its atoms. And we can see that each part of the car is composed of other phenomena and other phenomena. And you can take this ad infinitum right to its infinite extent, because it never comes to an end. There's always something more to be said in that process of reduction. So that extends infinitely. And then the infinite, when you reverse it, all these infinite extensions come together as a blue BMW. A blue BMW parked here at this moment in time. The blue BMW has not been practicing transcendental meditation, has not developed the power of levitation, and so it is parked on the earth in a particular place. Entities are always somewhere. The context and the entity are not two things. They are always there together. A car is always somewhere. A person is always somewhere. That somewhereness is not an optional extra, since we do not have the choice to be nowhere. The somewhereness is part and parcel of our being who we are. So the seeming autonomy of my existence or of the motor car has to be barred. You have to put it into question, because we are always contextualized. So who we are is always part and parcel of where we are. Because we become, we elevate, we manifest, we display who we are, where we are. You can't be a person not in a place. That's really important. That shows the emptiness of the notion of I am just me. I am just me being me. I my I-ness is always a we. We are always we. We are always multiple. Because even internally, we are multiple. We have our subpersonalities or self-states or moods. Sometimes one aspect is coming forward, sometimes another. So the analytical aspect of understanding emptiness is to again and again inspect the assumptions that we have about the phenomena we encounter, and to observe how we add this component, which in terms of our relative life seems to add value, meaning, and yet in its very revealing of the true quality of something, it conceals something else. So, for example, we say, there is a blue BMW. That reveals the nature of the car which is parked outside, but the seductive quality of that blue BMW, because we know what a blue BMW is, the clarity that is given by the term blue BMW, the illumination that it brings, simultaneously makes us stupid, because we no longer examine what's there. It's a blue BMW. So the clarity which comes from the conceptual identification of phenomena, which carries with it the sense that they are truly existing, brings about the hallucination or amnesia or hypnagogic induction into a taking for granted. Our curiosity vanishes the more that we know. So knowledge makes us stupid. Knowledge in that sense is very dangerous. Knowledge as understanding. I am standing under something which is already established. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Yes. So what are you standing under? What you talked about? Well, it's quite like an umbrella, isn't it? It's raining now. So when you walk around with an umbrella, you're not very free. The wind blows it. You've got to avoid stabbing people in the eyes with it. When you're holding something up, you're holding it up. Just as an umbrella traps your hand, it protects you and it enslaves you. Knowing that that is a blue BMW traps you and enslaves you in the same way. It gives you protection against not knowing what's what. But that very what's whatness means asleep. That is the heart of the real function of emptiness for us. To see that everything is a construct, is conventional, is conditioned, means not that we should wipe it away, but that we should be playful. Deconstruction is a call to play. It's a play not to take ourselves too seriously, not to arrive at a final solution. There is no final solution, because each thing tilts into another and another and another. We live in this endless chaining, this endless linking of signifiers, which, as they move, tilt each other. An image that's often given for this is Indra's net, which is a net of diamonds or crystal forms which covers the whole universe, and each facet of each jewel reflects all the facets of all the other jewels. So it's an endless interweaving of multiple reflections. And that's really what our world is, that we are endlessly being called into the aliveness of the bright shiningness of each moment. We don't know what it is, but as we've looked earlier, we can participate in it, and participate it from emptiness, as emptiness, towards emptiness, achieving nothing but emptiness. But that emptiness is vital and alive, radiant. Whereas when we rest in the conceptualization and we know what's what, we sit. It's as if we are the center of the world and things turn around us, like some spider in a web. That's a very different kind of net. That's a net that catches things, that traps them, that wraps them up and sucks the juice out of them. That's a very petty bourgeois way to exist. And that's one thing that we don't do in Macclesfield, is it? Petty bourgeois is off. It's so passé, darling. What's it all about? I hope you're going to have a good lunch. So, very, very important to observe how power, knowledge, the will to control actually cannot give us the goods. It is a false move. It's a mistaking of what our existence is all about. The more we try to secure things, the more we lose. But of course the opposite of that is not destruction. It's not about throwing your life into the winds. Delinquent teenagers who just leap into anything, they're not going anywhere good either. So it doesn't mean that you have to destroy your life. If you have a very conventional life and you play golf on Saturday and you're a member of clubs and so on, you don't need to stop doing any of that. You don't have to grow long hair or shave your head. There is nothing external that has to be done, because we're not trying to change the form of life. What we're trying to do is to see that each form in life is radiant and dynamic. It's not something that you can take for granted. Taking for granted is to insult your existence. Because the other possibility is to live in wonder, to be amazed moment by moment at colours, at sounds, to be vibrant and fresh. It's so amazing, isn't it? Little blackbird in the wintertime. Fantastic. It's just, So why do we take things for granted? It's a form of stupidity, a form of mental dullness. In Tibetan it's called timuk. Muk means kind of dark and heavy, and ti has also the idea of opacity, something impenetrable. And when we know what something is, we no longer penetrate it. It's not translucent. It is just what it is. It's a blue BMW. For God's sake, it's just a car. It's a blue BMW. Oh, okay. So you can't look at it. You can't look through it. Its name announces, bugger off. You know? I am my logo. I am this thing. McDonald's is good for you. Don't inquire. Nike are good. Never mind the children that stitch them. You know? It's all logos. It's all the dogmatic assertion of the name, the abstract concept that says knowledge precedes experience. Which is, again, takes us back to that more Sartrean existential move about, does essence precede existence, or is existence something which develops essences, but essences which will always de-essence themselves? I mean, he's rather, of course, pre-deconstructive, but it's the same sort of move. Because if an essence, if the seeming truth of something is generated out of the dynamic of experience, that essence will always be contingent. That is to say, it cannot be taken for granted as being something in itself, because its roots lead down into the dynamic movement of life. So, if you have children, these children manifest all sorts of things. You cannot know your children. You can be with your children, you can play with them, you can engage with them, but you cannot know them. You can know about them. You can know lots of things about them, but you cannot know them, because they will always be showing you new things. So in that sense, your knowledge is always falling off the child. That's why if the kids come home from school, you say, how was it today? Because you don't know. They have to tell you. That's why we face out towards others and we have questions. How are you? What's the matter? Are you okay? Because we don't know. If we knew, then the world would cease to move. So knowledge is a very suspect and false god. The knowledge of concepts. Emptiness means loosening up the urge to control and seeing the dynamic nature of all phenomena. And because they are dynamic, they cannot be known apart from their context. That context can only reveal itself through participation. Therefore, the path to awakening, the path to both wisdom and compassion, is to enter into the world as part of the world and allow the world to reveal itself as you are revealed to yourself through your participation of the world. So emptiness is the freedom to bracket off, to put to one side your assumptions, your foreclosures, your imaginations, in order to experience the world. And you can practice that in a very ordinary way. As you prepare food, you can see how things have a particular moment in which they are just what you want them to be. If you cook something for too long, it's likely to start burning on the bottom of the pan. And then the taste of burnt rice is not like the taste of unburnt rice. If something is not cooked enough, it won't have the flavor of a cooked thing. So if you have something like a potato or a courgette and it's not quite cooked, it is still a potato and a courgette, but when you put it in your mouth, you think it doesn't taste like a potato. Well, the taste of the potato is the taste of the cooked potato, because that's what we eat. Rabbits and other animals are quite happy to have raw potatoes. So the taste of the potato for the rabbit is different than for us. That is to say, a potato exists inside the biological and social cultural determinism of me wanting to have a cooked potato. The lifespan of the potato means that although I see it on the supermarket shelf and I buy it as a potato, I don't want to take it out of the bag and eat it. I want to take it home and cook it. So it's still a potato, but its potato-ness is only revealed to me through my participation with boiling water or fat or putting it in the oven. And that's the same with everything, isn't it? You have to cook things to make them tasty. So we cook the world through engaging with it. We bring the warmth of our heart, and in that oven, life starts to smell a little sweet. So analysis here doesn't mean something cold and distant. It's not some positivistic study of things which are out there and looking with a neutral gaze. It's rather an engagement which is alive and questioning. What is this? Who am I? Who am I is an invitation to find yourself. Who am I is a question that can never be answered, but is always being answered. It can never be answered because we are open. We are nothing as such. It can always be answered because we are whoever we are at the moment that we ask the question. That's the double move. So emptiness or openness, the ungraspability of the world, and the performativity of our existence moment by moment, which is a gesture of communication, is the unification of wisdom and compassion. So you can do that. Look at everything in your house. Look at carpets, look at clothes, look at children's homework. Look at everything you encounter and see how it is constructed. It's something put together. And start to observe the function of language in your existence. Language is something exquisite. It's a very beautiful thing. It can bring us so much pleasure. But it is a game. Language speaks to language. Language hovers like some mesmerizing archangel in the world with glistening wings and little rainbows falling from them. Words and things exist in a very complex and strange relationship. People like Wittgenstein would say, language has nothing to do with the world. Language only speaks to language. The world is... And that's quite a good place to start. So when you look at something like a watch, we can see this object and we can all say, yes, this is a watch. Watch is a name that we put onto this. What is the watchness of the watch? Is there anything watchy in the watch? If this watch had a voice, would it call itself a watch? Or is this voice, is this watch a victim of prejudice? For too long, watches have been called watches. We are now opening the Splotch Liberation Fund. All watches shall be renamed because the watch has announced itself as Splotch. It's because human ears can't quite understand watchy language. This is it. We don't see that we label the world. There is nothing about this that says watch. And of course, if you speak another language, it won't be watch in that language. It won't be called watch in Polish or French or German. It's called watch in English. So living inside a community, a linguistic community where there is a shared use of signifiers, we come to call this a watch. And it appears to be a watch in itself. We look at it and the watchness seems to be in the watch. The watchness is what we put onto this thing. What is this thing which we call a watch? Something we see. We can lick it and taste it. We can rub it on ourselves. We can have an engagement with it. What does it taste like? It's a bit kind of dry and cold, and some of my sweat's on the back of it too. So, interesting taste. I am describing in language something about this or this. I'm telling you about my sensation in licking this. And I say it tastes like, where's the taste? On the watch or in my mouth? This is what we do all the time, projecting onto phenomena attributes which are the radiance and creativity of ourselves. Our mind is just like this magnificent choreographer, this wonderful Scheherazade. We're endlessly telling stories and weaving dreams across the world. And we then think we're dumb and stupid because we don't know very much. Isn't that mad? This is the unborn creativity of the Dharmakaya. Everything that we see, that we experience, everything that we say is the ceaseless flow of energy of life itself. So, examining the most mundane phenomena, you can reclaim the vitality of the world as being an aspect of yourself, but this self is not separate. It is part of the world. So, inasmuch as you pull it back to yourself, you release it once again to its status of participant. And so the world becomes a co-emergence of phenomena which are ungraspable because, and the mind which is ungraspable because, and between these two dummies, it's all very bright and shiny. Pretty good. Pretty good. So this is the importance of emptiness. And there are many books describing this which you can study, and for those of you who live nearby in Macclesfield, you can bring these ideas into the study program and keep looking at them. It's really, really important. Many of the traditional texts on emptiness are a bit dull and dry. You should try not to be put off by that, because what people are trying to do is to use language to deconstruct or to undermine the foreclosure of things being what they appear to be. That's a difficult technical task. If it takes your fancy, and I hope it does, I would suggest it's worth participating in that, because it gives you micro tools. The more tools you have, the more situations you can do something with. In terms of yourself, maybe you don't need so many tools. You might have a Dharma path of a simple kind of meditation which feels enough for you. But you are not the limit of your world. Your world is others. And part of our gesture is always to be with others. So what tools do we need in order to be more fully with others? Sometimes these are philosophical tools, sometimes they're emotional tools. They are methodologies or ways in which, golden pathways along which we can move. So study, intellectual study, it's not the whole story, but it's a very, very useful support. Some people say, I'm not intellectual, or I couldn't understand that. Why not try? It's difficult. So, why is difficulty a problem? Foolish people climb to the top of Mount Everest for no reason at all. You know, if someone can climb to the top of Mount Everest, you can study Nagarjuna. Why not? It gives you a headache. What's a headache? What other things have given you a headache? Too much alcohol. Nagarjuna or too much alcohol. Nagarjuna probably has a more lasting benefit and won't damage your liver. So study is very important because each of us has Buddha nature. Our minds carry this natural radiance. We should trust that. It's very sad to make yourself stupid by telling yourself that you are stupid. If you want to know whether you're stupid or not, leave it up to other people. Ask other people, am I stupid? They'll tell you. It's unlikely that anybody is going to see that you're stupid because usually other people see us as better than we see ourselves. So again, don't let yourself be the limit of your own existence. You're not a very good judge of your value. As soon as we take refuge in the Dharma, we take refuge because we need protection from the limiting factors of our existence in order to move towards awakening. And when we take the Bodhisattva vow, we commit ourselves to helping others. So we need to resource ourselves. And we say when we take the Bodhisattva vow, as long as it takes, I will continue. As many beings as there are, I will liberate them. That means we need some resources. Getting resources requires time and effort. When people want to climb Mount Everest, they go and get sponsors, or these people who sail alone around the world, they get sponsors, they get the right boat, they get the right kind of food, and so on. People who go out into space to go on the moon, think how much resourcing people have for that. You want to realize your own nature and to liberate all sentient beings. You need to get a few resources. It takes time and effort to build these up. Then we have to think, what else do I use my time for? Oh, well, I need some downtime. I need just to chill. I need to relax. Okay, so why is studying the truth about existence not relaxing? Why would that be work? What is our nature of work? That we have to apply our energy feels as if it's stealing something from us. But of course, when we apply our energy, there is this delicious movement. The mind focused, vibrant, clear, the body tense and alert. Isn't that gorgeous? So how can we avoid that? You know, there's so many stories that we have from the way our culture construes things, that work is shit, so you need the weekend. Or actually, work is gorgeous. Meaningful work is vibrancy. The worst thing in life is to be useless, to have no use for yourself or for others. So understanding emptiness is very, very important, and you can pursue it in a very simple way. You have an orange, take the peel off the orange. Would you like an orange? Yes. Okay, eat the whole damn thing. No, I don't want to eat the skin. Who'd want to eat the skin in an orange? But it's an orange. You said you wanted an orange. No, but I only want that bit of the orange. Just in these little moments, you can see, no. Do you want a Kit Kat? Yeah. Okay, eat the wrapping. No, I just want the chocolate. But it says Kit Kat on it. You wanted the Kit Kat. Well, you have the wrapping, I'll eat the chocolate. You wanted the Kit Kat. It doesn't say Kit Kat on the chocolate. In that way, just observe all the time how we construct, how we delude ourselves. This is the essence, really, of Lojong. Lojong is developing the capacity of our intelligence to make discriminations and to see how deluded we are. There is no shame in being deluded. Being deluded is the beginning of awakening. When you realize how easily you are mesmerized, how easily you get led astray, you start to understand something of the nature of the mind. So that when we do meditation and we decide, I'm going to focus my attention on the breath, and then half an hour goes by and you've been everywhere but focused on the breath, that's very useful. If you say to yourself, oh, I can't meditate, this is a waste of time, that's not helpful. That's just old stories that you run on yourself. Much more interesting to think, oh, what is this? How come I can't do a simple task? I think that I am an adult who is competent, who can carry out my life. I can go shopping, I can park the car in a small space, I can do my tax returns, I can do all these sorts of things, and I can't keep my mind focused on my breath. What is that? That's really, really interesting. Observing how I get lost. No blame, no shame, just curiosity. And that curiosity itself makes the mind shine. So in that way, your limitations or your mistakes become a path to awakening. So again, the key points are always the same. Tenderness. Because tenderness is very gentle and very close. When you're tender to something or tender to yourself, you're very with it. If you've got a lovely mohair jumper, you might want to wash it by hand. And you get these nice soap flakes, and you have to get them all dissolved in the water. So it's already quite a sensuous experience. And then you plunge the wool in, and you feel the wool absorbing the water, and it gets heavy. And then very gently you're rubbing it, and you just feel that gorgeous. So in that way, if we are so tender with something made of wool, why wouldn't we be tender to ourselves and tender to other people? Because when you're tender, you feel things. The quality of the wool is revealed through the quality of your attention. This is the heart of the Dharma, that the world we live in is the world of our own qualities. What we get is what we are. And we are very fortunate because we meet here together and we start to understand that we are much, much more than we ever thought we were. And getting closer to the infinity of our being allows us not to retreat from the world, but to be with the world in a way that lets it reveal its richness. Okay, time goes by. If we do some final sitting with the 3R, this is a very simple practice. You can do it by yourselves or you can do it here at the center. And it's based again on the principle of relaxation. Don't be busy in your mind. Just allow yourself a mere presence. Just, as we say, releasing the tensions, conceptualization out, and just resting with whatever occurs. If judgments arise, let them come and pass. Whatever is arising, just allow it to rise and go. Don't try to block thoughts or feelings from coming. Don't try to push them on their way. Don't try to hang on to them. Just allow equal opportunities. Whatever comes, comes. Whatever goes, goes. And we stay open in that state for some time and come to an end. Then we dedicate the merit of whatever we've done to all sentient beings. You can just imagine out of our hearts rays of rainbow-colored light spreading out to all beings. Gewandi nyudun da urgen lama drujane droa chichamalupa dei sala kepasho. Okay. So, that brings us to the end. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I've had a good time. Hope you have too.